in a world where cinema reigns supreme. Join us on an epic journey through the silver screen. Welcome to What's New with Stu, a movie review, with your host Dave Stewart, a video podcast where every frame tells a story. Get ready for insights, laughs, and film debates. From blockbusters to hidden gems, we've got it all covered. Lights, camera, action. It's time for What's New with Stu, a movie review. And now your host, David F. Stewart.
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steiners war ein Befehl! Wer schickt Sie? Dass Sie es wagen, sich meinen Befehl zu widersetzen! Jeder hat mich belogen, sogar die SS! Die gesamte Generalität ist nichts weiter als ein Haufen niederträchtiger, treuloser Feiglinge!
Mein Führer, ich kann nicht zulassen, dass die Soldaten, die für Sie verbringen...
Nicht als Feiglinge! Verreiter, Versager!
Mein Führer, was Sie da sagen, ist ungeheuerlich!
Die Generalität ist das Geschmeiß des deutschen Volkes! Sie ist ohne Ehre!
In the immortal words of the late great Benny Hill, good evening, viewers, good evening all. Welcome to another episode of What's New with Stu, a movie review. And in this episode, we're going to tackle a subject that I'm very, very into, and that's World War II, and specifically the actions of one Adolf Hitler.
Ich hätte gut daran getan, von Jahren alle höheren Offiziere liquidieren zu lassen, wie Stalin! Ich war nie auf einer Akademie. Und doch habe ich allein auf mich gestellt, ganz Europa erobert.
Downfall is basically about Hitler's last days in the bunker of World War II, specifically the last 10 days of his life there. There's a few flashbacks that show his relationship with some of the other famous people like Albert Speer, his architect and so forth, and Himmler's in there, and of course with Eva Braun when she shows up and so forth. But there's a secretary in real life that was interviewed years later when she was hired by Hitler as his secretary.
Und wie heißen Sie?
Ich heiße Traudl Hums, ich komme aus München.
Eine Münchnerin.
The film is probably one of the more accurate depictions of what happened to him in the final days. Anthony Hopkins did a great TV movie called The Bunker.
The war is lost.
The war is not lost! The war is not lost! The war will never be lost! I will destroy Bolshevism! I will wipe out the scourge and pestilence of Jewish Marxism!
Hopkins was excellent as Hitler. He was nominated for an Emmy. He was really good. But this film, by the way, is completely done with German dialect. You have to have subtitles when you watch it, but it makes it really authentic.
Himmler hat in Lübeck den Westmächten ein Kapitulationsangebot gemacht.
Und ausgerechnet Himmler!
Der Treueste der Treue.
Das ist der schlimmste Verrat von allen!
Bruno Ganz is the lead here, and he's excellent as Hitler. He's superb.
Also Peter heißt du. Ich wollte, meine Generale hätten deinen Mut.
This is just an incredible, absorbing film. And again, for many of you that do not know about the final days, and I've seen The Bunker, and I've seen other films, and I've seen documentaries on the subject matter, if you know nothing about it, you should watch this, because to be honest with you, there's not really a main movie, especially a Hollywood film, about Hitler. There have been films where his character shows up, even like Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Last Crusade, he makes an appearance, and he's been in other films. But there's no film that shows his whole life, and I think because the character is so vilified that a lot of people feel you just can't really make a movie about just Hitler. You'd have to make it about, maybe as a sub-character. This film, even though it's mainly about him, and it's from the German perspective, is not even about his whole life. It's kind of like the final 10 days.
Hören Sie gut zu, Wünsche. Ich werde mir nicht anders als Fräulein Brauna, meine Frau, selbst das Leben nehmen. Ich möchte aber nicht, dass meine Leiche von den Russen in einem Panoptikum ausgestellt wird. Ich darf dem Russen weder tot noch lebendig in die Hände fallen. Ich will sofort danach verbrannt werden und für immer unentdeckt.
Mein Führer, das ist ein schrecklicher Befehl, aber ich will ihn ausführen.
Think about where we would be now if the Nazis were successful. It's the kind of thing we don't really talk about now because it's part of old history. But my father was alive. He was alive when Hitler was walking the earth. Think about that. And so were a lot of other people you may know. So we have to learn from the mistakes of our past. The fact is what Hitler did is still possible today. That for someone to literally convince the country that his way is the only way and to basically say, the hell with everything else, we're going to do it my way. And in his case, starting wars all over the place and obviously being responsible for this destruction of 2/3 of the Jews of Europe. And that's why this story has always fascinated me, how one man really was able to do this. One man. Obviously, he had enablers. If people didn't follow him, he wouldn't have been successful. They enabled him, they helped him. But nevertheless, it was still really one man that motivated them. They thought he was a god. They called him the Führer, German for leader. He was it. Now, one of the criticisms of this movie, the criticism was, believe it or not, was that some people complained they made Hitler too human.
Darf ich fragen, wie Sie heißen?
Ich heiße Margarete Lorenz, Heilmann-Führer.
Wo kommen Sie her?
Aus Fulda, Heilmann-Führer.
Und Sie, wie heißt Sie?
Ich heiße Ursula Puttkammer, Heilmann-Führer.
Und das können Sie ruhig weglassen, Kind. Sagen Sie mir ganz einfach, woher Sie kommen.
Aus Frankfurt am Main, mein Führer.
Too human. He was human. A lot of people have a problem, whether it's Hitler or any other vilified subject or person in history, was that they must have been part demon. Because anybody that could, be responsible for the mass murder of 6 million people, like in Hitler's case, or even the things that Stalin did to his own people, cannot be human. Or we can't show that they're human. But it's so ridiculous because that's the way they are. They are human. There are people that are humans, the terrible thing. And they criticize the film, and I can't imagine anybody with a brain really go in it and criticize. You may not like that he's shown that way. Maybe that's better than saying they're criticizing, but to not recommend the film or say, well, the film is showing him too likable, or again, there are scenes in the film where he's very passive. Once he knows he's losing the war, him and Ava Brown are having dinner and he's just sitting there, even though he knows he's going to plan on, killing her and killing himself.
In a series of scenes that if it didn't really happen would be hard to believe and is even harder to watch. Joseph Goebbels, who was Hitler's Reich Minister of Propaganda and one of Hitler's most devoted followers, and his wife Magda decided to kill themselves in the bunker once Hitler had decided he would do the same, and they didn't want to live without the Führer to lead them.
Mein Führer, ich flehe Sie an, verlassen Sie Berlin. Mein Führer, bitte, verlassen Sie uns nicht. Was soll denn aus uns werden?
Morgen schon werden mich Millionen verfluchen. Aber das Schicksal wollte es nicht anders.
But the part that is so hard to comprehend, because it actually did happen, and it's tough to watch, it really is that they also decided to end their 6 children's lives the day before taking their own lives by poisoning them with cyanide compound. This is one of the most powerful scenes in Downfall, and it's quite unsettling to witness, I will say.
You like what you see? Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you're guaranteed not to miss any future updates of any podcast I have coming out.
On a funny side note, after the release of Downfall in 2004, parodies started surfacing on YouTube called the Hitler Rants, wherein the scene I showed earlier and others showed Hitler screaming at his men in the bunker, realizing he's been betrayed by his subordinates. From being upset about a new tech product that was released with features that were missing.
Das war ein Befehl! Der Angriff Steiners war ein Befehl! Oh, weit ist das also gekommen. Das Militär hat mich belogen! Jeder hat mich belogen, sogar die SS!
To Hitler finding out that he himself is in the Epstein files.
Ich hätte gut daran getan, von Jahren alle höheren Offiziere liquidieren zu lassen, wie Stalin!
These rants are hysterical, especially since you can take the version of Downfall with no subtitles and add any subject you want. Very funny.
The Third Reich would last for 1,000 years, and it basically lasted only for 12. Thank God it all ended in 1945 when he killed himself, and the Russians and Americans in England won World War II. By the way, since many of the scenes of the film were based on the eyewitness account of Hitler's secretary, Traudl Junji, I believe that's how you pronounce her name, the real-life Junji is shown before and after the rest of the film as bookends to the events that are shown. What happened to her and the fate of many of the real-life participants that were in the bunker are revealed at the end of Downfall. And that's what makes it even more of a cautionary tale, because it doesn't take a demon to do what Hitler did. Sometimes it just takes a man, and takes a lot of good people that don't do the right thing to help an evil man become a tyrant, and a successful tyrant at that. But anyway, watch Downfall, one of the best, most realistic historical dramas you will ever see. In the immortal words of the late great Benny Hill, good evening, viewers. Good evening, all. We'll see you next time, and we'll see you at the movies.